And it is now my great pleasure to welcome our opening keynote speaker, Magdalena Skipper. Magdalena is editor-in-chief of Nature, which everybody knows, but for those of you who might not because you're further from the science domain, Nature is the most prestigious and recognized peer-reviewed journal in science in the world. Magdalena Skipper is also a board member, and we are very fortunate to be able to benefit from her insights. So she will be telling us how new research ecosystems can be or stay resilient, inclusive, and trusted places in a rapidly changing world. Magdalena.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. And many things that I will say to you and I will propose to you during the next 10 minutes or so, in many ways have been excellently introduced by the previous speakers. I will put a different framing on it. I would say all of us probably, and I'm making an assumption because you are here, agree on two things. One thing is that research today is more complex than it has ever been before, and that research, science, has truly transformative power. That power we experience in our lives on a daily basis. The title of the summit is The Age of Possibility. What I will put to you in the next few minutes is that possibility of transformational power of science could be realized much better if we really embrace the complexity of the research, and as we often call it, research ecosystem. To do that better, to realize that potential better, we would do well to look to what we know already about natural ecosystems, what ecology and environmental sciences teach us about it. So in a way of introduction, very briefly, Ecosystems 101, everybody understands that ecosystems are complex. They are made up of communities, each of which occupies a niche, but what's necessary for those ecosystems to thrive is a dynamic interaction, a set of dynamic interactions between and among those communities. And a fundamental property of a healthy ecosystem is that it's diverse. And all these things together, the diversity of niches and the communities and dynamic interactions, together contribute and define the robustness of the ecosystem. I find that analogy to be very, very helpful when we think about the research community. So what might we consider in this context? Well, first and foremost, collaboration as part of conducting research. That collaboration unfolding in a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary fashion. Research thrives best when it's global. That collaboration expands across the globe, so that global focus. Research no longer unfolds just in the academia. It happens outside of it, so that cross-sector perspective is really important in the spirit of embracing these different niches. I already alluded to diversity, and that diversity is important in at least two ways, diversity of actors and perspectives. That in turn translates into trust, which loss of trust is a threat to science and research ecosystem today. And finally, there is a broader context, externalities to our ecosystem, and how robust are we in this context. So very briefly, in terms of collaborations, I want to illustrate this with three examples that come from Nature, the journal that I lead. The first one is that of the human genome. The public effort to sequence the human genome, now more than 20 years old, was a fundamentally international, multidisciplinary collaboration which has transformed not only the dynamics with which life sciences and natural sciences evolve today, or life sciences specifically, but of course it has touched on pretty much every aspect of life sciences, including medicine. Today's medicine is genomic medicine. The second example is a much more recent example. That's the Blue Food Assessment, a collaboration between Stanford University and Stockholm Resilience Institute, which looked at bringing together collaboration across disciplines and across geographies, looked together at environmental aspects, nutritional aspects, aspects of social justice. Small-scale fishes contribute tremendously to the generation of aquatic foods, and small-scale fishing is mainly done by women and the youth. And my third example is that of James Webb Space Telescope. Again, an extremely multidisciplinary effort of technologists, material scientists, engineers, and scientists producing an instrument which, for everyone to use effectively, which allows us to look into the universe in a way that we've never done before. And of course, that collaborative nature translates to my own team, which is what you see at the top of the slide. We must also remember that collaboration, in order to be successful, has to be equitable and collaborative in its own nature. It was already alluded by the previous speakers that movement of researchers is absolutely essential. Science thrives when it's global. International collaboration lie at the heart of science. The graphic I'm showing you is a snapshot of international collaborations as defined by co-publication. This is data from Nature Index, which is part of the Nature portfolio. It's a snapshot looking at the past year. In today's divided world, where researchers find it more and more difficult to collaborate across countries, to move across countries, how will that picture look next year and the year after? The cross-sector perspective is absolutely essential in order for us in the research ecosystem to realize our potential, especially so when the research ecosystem is under threat. Sometimes we're guilty of thinking that research ecosystem contains only researchers and then only in academia. As I already said, research today happens in the private sector. It happens in the context of NGOs and non-governmental institutions. The covers of Nature you see here represent research, original research, which was conducted in the private sector by Google and Sony in these particular examples. But there are, of course, other stakeholders. Each of these stakeholders contribute to the well-being of the research ecosystem, can be thought of as their own niches in their own right. And it's that interaction that we need to focus on and maximize in order to build robustness. And incidentally, that list is, of course, not exhaustive. For example, businesses not listed on this slide. Diversity of actors is really essential for two reasons, at least. One is, of course, that diverse actors bring different perspectives to the table. That means different questions will be asked, and even if the same questions are asked, they will be answered in a different way. That makes for good science, that makes for more robust science, and crucially, it makes for more relevant science. What's important here, that we must not create hierarchies, for example, whether fundamental science is more important than applied science. Rather, we must celebrate all types of questions that scientists, researchers wish to grapple with, depending on their priorities. The other reason for which diversity of voices is important is because one of the threats to the research ecosystem today is the waning trust. Scientists continue to be the most trusted profession in surveys done across the globe, but what's also interesting is that trust is placed more and more in those other individuals who look like us, who speak like us, who come from similar cultural backgrounds. For that reason, engaging with a wider diversity of scientists is going to naturally build that trust. And of course, the road to trust lies through transparency of how science is done, not just what it achieves. And all of this builds together towards creating that robust research ecosystem, a research ecosystem which is robust against externalities, against perturbations. Indeed, we live in a very particular time where we have tensions from geopolitics, when in some quarters governments no longer place trust and confidence in science. It is for all of us, the different stakeholders occupying the different niches, to unite together so the ecosystem can be robust against these kinds of permutations. And exactly the strength comes from that unity, the interactions, focusing on the diversity of strengths that each of the players brings together in this ecosystem. And it is through that collaboration writ large. So what I would put to you is that the research ecosystem has all the ingredients to leverage its own properties, to set itself up for success. All we need to do is to embrace it and recognize the power that lies within when that ecosystem is understood in its broadest sense. So I want to leave you with two quotes. The first one is perhaps a little bit unusual. I don't think Henry Ford gets quoted in these types of meetings very often, but I really do like this quote. So this quote is attributed to him: "Coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success." And the second quote is the one which I really like and I think is particularly appropriate to the research ecosystem and research as an enterprise. It's an African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And of course, research is a long-term enterprise. Thank you very much.